Hello! So I have decided I am going to make more videos about books. So today we are going to be talking about Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. There will be spoilers for Six of Crows, but I'm going to try and avoid saying anything too much about Crooked Kingdom. So if you haven't read that, you should be fine watching this video. I won't be talking about any of the big stuff that happens at the end or anything like that. And no spoilers for really any of the other Grishaverse books, so I'll be sort of dividing the qualities of the book into four categories: relationships, characters, plot, and just general writing style. So yeah, let's jump right into it. Let's talk first about the characters. Because although at the end of the day, Six of Crows is, a heist book, and it's sort of really centered around a big plot point that happens, I feel like that is not actually its most redeeming quality, and that a lot of people read the book for the characters. And that is definitely true, because the characters in this book are insane. I have read quite a few books, and rarely do you find so many characters that are so unique and so well individually fleshed out, and I'll be discussing why that happens in this book. So my favorite part about this book is that each character has three components. They have their reason for being on the heist, like their motivation for going along with the plot, which is obviously essential. They have relationships to other characters that are unique and different, and they have another thing. They have that elusive, it's just like a third thing that they have that is separate from being someone's friend or being someone's partner, and is separate from the plot motivations. They each have their own unique perspective and take on life, which is so hard to find in books, where each character is not just there to serve the plot or not just there to serve another character, but each are their own individual character. And the fact that this book does that with 6 different characters, and each character is like done well and given full justice, like, that's pretty impressive. For example, let's look at Nina. Nina has her own reason for wanting to go on the heist. She wants to get Matthias out of jail. She wants to keep this drug, Jotaperim, that can hurt Grisha, out of the hands of other Grisha. She also has her relationships with other characters. She has her, enemies to lovers thing with Matthias, and she has her, her friendship with Inej and with Jesper and stuff. But she also has her own thing. Like, she individually sort of decides on her own that she wants to kill the guy they're supposed to kidnap, instead of just, using him to make money. Because she wants to keep Jotaperim from ever becoming like a thing under anyone's control. She wants to save Grisha. So she has that own individual third motivation that keeps her moving throughout the book. And every character has this, which is amazing. Like, it makes the book so much more interesting to read when every character has their own reason for being there and their own reason for just existing outside of the plot. Like, Inej's sort of desire to, get a ship and hunt down like slavers and people who capture other people is completely separate from the plot, and it's completely separate from the desires of any other character. And the fact that she is able to have that own thing is so great. It's just wonderful. It's like amazing. It makes the characters so much more interesting. Also, the sheer diversity of the characters, and I'm not just talking about racial diversity or gender diversity and sexuality diversity, because there is that, and each character, there's like so much representation in like all of the characters, but each character is just different. They're all fundamentally different. The way Kaz looks at the world is not the way any other character looks at the world. You can always tell when it's like Jesper's perspective because of the things he thinks about other people. You'll notice the way Wylan and Matthias think about Kaz is completely different from each other. Like, every person is their own separate entity, and every person has their own separate takes on the world, which makes every single person's point of view so interesting to read, because there's something new. Like, you're never seeing, Wylan and Jesper don't think the same way. The same event can happen, and Wylan and Jesper will think completely different things about it, which is really makes the book so much more interesting, and makes the book like a good time to read, because you always know that whatever character's perspective you're getting a new look on the world. And when the way Leigh Bardugo chooses whose perspective to look at is so well done. Like, I'm never very rarely am I in a situation thinking, oh, I wish we were looking at a different character's perspective here. Like, very rarely is something happening and I'm like, oh, but I wish we were seeing, like, through Nina's eyes. It's all perfectly placed. The plot is done so well too. It is so complicated, but like in a good way. Like, I don't understand half of what happened at the ice court at the end of Six of Crows, but I didn't care. Like, I was so thrilled to just be along for the ride that all the complicated stuff Kaz kept pulling out of his back pocket didn't even matter. Everything was foreshadowing for something else, which I loved. Like, and when it comes to Crooked Kingdom, that it didn't feel like another sequel just tacked on. It felt like the real things that the characters did in the first book had consequences, and that those consequences played out in a realistic fashion. And I love when characters affect the plot, like when it's the character making decisions that change the world around them rather than characters being forced to adapt to things that happen. Well, there's a place for both. I think that when characters make a choice and then have to deal with it, that is so much more powerful than when characters just, like, something happens and then you sort of just have to roll with it. The characters are able to use the plot as a playing field. They're able to sort of the plot sets the stage, but then the characters choose what happens from then on, and it makes the book so much more interesting to read. Like, Inej gets kidnapped at the end of Six of Crows, and that is because of sort of a mistake that Kaz made, and Jesper makes a mistake. He, like, tells someone that something's gonna happen, and, like, that gets them, like, stopped at the harbor at the very beginning of the book, but he's like, they're allowed to make mistakes because in the real world, people make mistakes and those have consequences. No character is perfect, and each character's actions change the plot, which changes what happens to other characters. It's just all so interwoven in such, like, a well-done fashion that I never felt, like, lost or left out, really, even if I didn't 100% grasp what was happening. When it comes to characters' relationships with each other, in the third category, relationships, I'm a sucker for a good found family trope, and that is definitely shown here, especially from when we get, like, Wyland's perspective or Nina's perspective. They totally see, like, everyone around them as, like, their new family, and I think that's so sweet. Like, it's so nice to see characters who care about each other, which feels like it should be common, but isn't. Another aspect that is amazing in Six of Crows is female friendships. Because for YA literature being such, like, a women-led genre, very rarely are women, like, friends. Like, do women have good, fleshed out friendships with each other? But Inej and Nina are, like, besties. Like, they talk about stuff with each other. They don't just talk about boys, but they do talk about boys. They talk about, like, the plot and things that happen, and I think it's amazing that they are, like, there's, like, it sounds so basic. It sounds so, like, this should be obvious, but it's not. But, like, it's just wonderful that two women can be friends, and it's fine, and they like each other, which is amazing. Additionally, each romantic relationship has its own dynamic. Like, Six of Crows definitely focuses more on romantic relationships than friendships, which isn't something that I personally prefer. Like, I like when we have a lot of really well-done friendships in books, but I found myself not minding that we focused on romantic relationships more, because I love that everyone had their own dynamic. You know, with Jesper and Wyland, you sort of had that will they, won't they. With Nina and Matthias, you had your full-on and well-done enemies to lovers, and then Kaz and Inej had that, you know, painful slow burn that Leigh Bardugo is so good at. And I found myself, like, enjoying every snippet we got of the relationships, and I found that they never detracted from the plot. In fact, they added to it. You know, like, Inej being taken is sort of what spurs the entirety of Crooked Kingdom. And the characters' relationships with each other are just as important as the things that happen in the plot, which felt very authentic to, like, a real-world sort of scenario, especially with these characters being teenagers. Like, they care about each other, and that's shown. Also, they do family relationships really well. One of my favorite parts of Six of Crows is Jesper's relationship with his father, because it is really rare in YA literature that we either see parents, have parents who are alive, or have, like, realistic relationships with parents. Like, not everyone is, like, super bestie palling around with their parents, but not everyone hates their parents either. Like, Jesper loves his father, and he cares about him, but they also have, like, a complicated relationship. Like, it's not perfect. His relationship with his father isn't perfect, but they still love each other and they care about each other. And while obviously there are relationships with Wylan and his dad, which are like terrible, like awful father-son relationships, but we also get to see like good, positive family relationships too. Like, Inej loves her family, but she sort of idolizes them, whereas Wylan hates his family, but then Jesper's sort of in the middle, so we get to see all of that. And then Nina, Matthias, and Cass's families are all dead. Which I understand was like plot reasons, but I do like that we got variety. Again, like going back to that sort of idea that everyone is different and everyone has like a diverse life experience. Alright, last category, general writing style. So Leigh Bardugo is like a lot of authors in that her style develops a lot. Like the way Shadow and Bone is written is way different from the way Six of Crows is written, because she's grown as an author and grown as a writer through the course of her career. I think that although the writing style wasn't like a big eye catcher for me in Six of Crows, I found that there are so many lines where I was like, that's poetry. I love that. And there are a lot of times where I was like, yeah, this is like well written, but it's nothing to like write home about. I'd give it like, it was like well done, but I wasn't like crying over how beautiful it was, if that makes sense. I think I already talked about this, but like she knows when to use a point of view. She always knows, like Leigh Bardugo being she knows when to like throw a character's perspective in there, which I think is amazing. There's so much foreshadowing well done. Like, okay, these are gonna be kind of spoilers. With Wylan like not being able to read and Jesper being like a Grisha, on my reread of Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, I found myself being like, how did I not guess that before? How did I not see? Because there are so many hints. Well, it was still a surprise. You know, and we don't find out that Jesper is a Grisha until like 2/3 of the way through the first book, which is amazing that we're still finding out so much about our characters that far in. We don't find out about all of Kaz's like traumatic backstory until they're in the Ice Court, which is insane. Like, so many books will just info dump a bunch of stuff with you at the beginning, but Six of Crows doesn't do that. It lets you find stuff out naturally, which I think is great. And the whole book flows really well too. There was never really a point where I was like, I wish we'd taken more time with this, or oh my gosh, we're dragging our feet, let's just move forward. I was never like agonizing over the pace. So, to sum it all up, is Six of Crows worth the hype? Yes it is. It honestly deserves all of the praise it gets, which I feel like is rare. Like, people will like idolize their favorite books or whatever, but Six of Crows is honestly just like a really good book. I'm on my second reread right now and I'm enjoying it. Like, it holds up. It's a book that holds up, and it's not just interesting because it's new and exciting, but it's also interesting because it's just a well done piece of literature, and I highly recommend it if you haven't read it. This one's for my sister. Go read Six of Crows.